Today, we're going to talk about the Neolithic Revolution and how it built our world, from foragers to farmers. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm Miss Bree, educator, farmer, illustrator, singer, and proud grammar nerd. At the Farm School, we believe that learning should be hands-on, real-world, and a little bit magical. So, are you ready? Let's have fun! So, first unit we're going to cover is Before Farming, Life as Hunter-Gatherers. So, welcome to 20,000 years ago. Close your eyes for a minute. There are no roads, no cities, no farms, no grocery stores. You wake up under a sky full of stars. The air is cool. You are part of a small group of about 30 people. These are your family, your friends, your entire world. Did you know that for most of human history, about 95% of it so far, people did not farm? They survived by hunting animals and gathering wild plants. This was not primitive. It was skilled, intelligent, and deeply connected to nature. The sun rises. The camp begins to stir. Some adults prepare to track deer. Others gather baskets to collect berries and nuts. Children stay close, learning by watching and helping. You don't have homework, but you do have responsibilities. You might help gather firewood or carry water. There is no weekend, but there is also no alarm clock and no boss. Survival depends on teamwork. Many hunter-gatherers actually worked fewer hours each day than many adults do today. Here's the exciting part. You don't know. Your meals depend on what animals are nearby, what plants are in season, what your group can find, and unfortunately, some days are plentiful and others are lean. Your diet is varied. Wild fruits, roots, nuts, fish, and meat. This variety keeps you strong, but it also keeps you moving. You never knew what your dinner was going to be. Look at your hands. In them, you hold a spear tipped with a sharp stone. It took you hours to make that sharp stone. If it breaks, you have to make another. Your people shape hand axes from stone, needles from bone, fishing hooks from carved wood. There is no store to replace what you lose. Knowledge is your greatest tool. You also don't stay in one place forever. You may sleep in a cave, a hide-covered tent, or even a wooden lean-to. Who knows? But when food runs low, your group moves. Mobility equals survival. There are no textbooks. You can't just read about something and do it. Instead, you learn which berries are safe, where animals migrate, which plants heal wounds, how clouds signal storms. This knowledge is passed down through stories and practice, not through books. Nature is both your grocery store and your classroom. Now, this is an activity I want you to do, and you can pause the video while you discuss with a partner or a friend. I want you to survive. Imagine you have to survive with only 5 items. What would you choose? A knife? A rope? A blanket? A fire starter? Every choice has a trade-off. If you take one thing, that means you can't bring another. Just like 20,000 years ago. Unit 2, the Neolithic Revolution. Now, imagine something changes. You accidentally drop seeds near your camp. Months later, plants grow there. You realize something powerful. You don't always have to search for food. You might be able to grow it. About 12,000 years ago, this discovery began changing everything. This shift is called the Neolithic Revolution. and this is one of the most important events in human history. So, you begin choosing the biggest seeds to plant over again. Over time, the plants change because you keep choosing the biggest seeds. You keep choosing the most productive plants. You keep choosing all these things, right? When you keep goats, you keep the calmest goats, right? Because you're originally handling wild goats. So you decide, you know what? I'm working really hard. I'm going to keep the calmest ones and get rid of the rest. So over time, as you breed them, they become easier to manage. This is called domestication. Domestication. Shaping plants and animals to help humans. So without knowing it, you are reshaping the future of Earth. So see, like on the illustration there, we've got a wild mountain sheep that over time was domesticated and turned into a current wool sheep, right? Because some sheep were bred for wool production because it was warm. So imagine the world at the end of the last ice age. For thousands of years, huge sheets of earth covered parts of the earth. The climate was cold and unpredictable. Animals moved often. Plants grew in short seasons. But then something changed. About 12,000 years ago, the earth began to warm. The ice age slowly ended. Weather became more stable. Seasons became more predictable. In some areas, especially near rivers, wild grains began to grow in thick patches year after year. Now picture yourself as a hunter-gatherer living during this time. You begin to notice something important. You know that wild wheat you gathered last year? It grew back in the same place. The animals you followed? Well, they returned in patterns. You begin to realize something powerful. Nature follows cycles. At the same time, human populations were slowly increasing. More people meant more mouths to feed. In some areas, wild food sources became harder to rely on. So, people began experimenting. Maybe someone dropped seeds near camp and saw them grow. Maybe someone protected a patch of wild grain from animals. Maybe someone kept the calmest goats or sheep nearby instead of chasing them away. These small choices, repeated over generations, led to farming. Farming didn't begin because people suddenly wanted a harder life. In fact, early farming was more work than hunting and gathering. It began because of three big reasons. One, climate change made growing plants more possible. Two, population growth increased the need for reliable food. And three, humans are natural problem solvers and experimenters. Over time, these experiments turned into a new way of life. No one knew they were starting a revolution, they were just trying to survive. And in doing so, they changed the future of humanity forever. Your life slows down. You stay in one place longer. But now you have to plant, water, weed, guard crops, feed animals. Farming is hard work. I can personally attest to this. Often harder than hunting. But it brings something new. Predictability. For the first time, you grow more food than you need today. You store grain in clay pots. Extra food is called surplus, and surplus leads to population growth, permanent homes, trade, ownership. This changes human society forever. Unit 3 is the first villages. Okay, so close your eyes and imagine this. For generations, your family has followed animals across wide lands. When food runs low, you pack up and move. The world is your home. But now something feels different. You have planted seeds. You are waiting for them to grow. And if you leave, you lose your crop. So for the first time, staying put makes sense. As farming begins, people slowly realize that if they can stay in one place, they can care for crops, protect stored grain, raise animals, build stronger shelters, and so much more. Imagine watching tiny green shoots push through the soil. You feel hope and responsibility. Those plants need tending. They're just babies. They need water. They need protection from animals. So instead of packing up camp, you build something sturdier. Mud bricks replace temporary shelters. Roofs become stronger. Fire pits become permanent. Staying in one place allows families to grow larger. Babies are a lot easier to care for when you are not constantly walking long distances. And elders can remain in one community instead of traveling. But settling down brings new challenges as well. Trash builds up, diseases spread more easily, arguments over land begin. For the first time in human history, humans must think about ownership. This field, is it yours? Who decides? Settling down changes more than homes. It changes how people think about space, community, and responsibility. You are no longer just passing through the land. You are shaping it. And once humans begin building permanent homes, there is no turning back. This is the beginning of villages, the beginning of neighborhoods, the beginning of cities. And it all starts with one decision: to stay. This brings safety and cooperation, but also new challenges. As we stated, trash piles up, disease spreads, arguments happen. What do you do? Well, living together requires rules, right? Just like your mom and dad have rules for living in the house. Same thing. Well, and with stable food, people have extra time now. They don't have to constantly worry about where their next meal is coming from. So they paint walls, create jewelry, sculpt figurines. Art and belief systems grow. Cultures deepen. So here's your activity for this unit. And remember, you can pause the video while you discuss this with a partner or a friend. But what I want you to do is think about, if you were building a village, where would you place things like homes, fields, animals, animal waste? What about storage for extra things? Every single choice you make affects health and safety. Unit 4, New Jobs and Technology. So imagine your village during harvest season. Okay, the fields are golden. Grain is stored safely in clay pots. For the first time, there is more food than your family needs right now. That extra food, called surplus, changes everything. Because now, not everyone has to spend every day growing food. Picture this. Instead of going to the fields, you stay near the village center. You shape clay into sturdy pots. Others are spinning thread from plant fibers like flax. This turns into linen. Someone else is carefully chipping stone into sharp tools. You are becoming a specialist. Specialization means focusing on one skill and getting very good at it. Before farming, almost everyone hunted or gathered food. Survival required everyone to do similar work. But now, surplus allows choice. Some people become potters or weavers, toolmakers or builders, even traders. And when someone practices one skill over and over, they improve, right? Practice makes perfection. Their pots become stronger, their tools sharper, their cloth softer. This leads to innovation. A better sickle cuts grain faster. A stronger pot stores food longer. A sharper blade makes hunting easier. Specialization makes progress speed up, but it also changes society. Now, people depend on each other in new ways. The farmer depends on the toolmaker. The toolmaker depends on the farmer, and the trader connects them all. This creates a web of cooperation and sometimes competition. It also begins to create differences in wealth and status. Some jobs may be more valued than others. For the first time, work becomes identity. Instead of just being a member of the group, you are the potter, the weaver, the leader, the trader. This is the early beginning of modern careers. So today, when someone says, I'm a teacher, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a farmer, they are continuing a pattern that began thousands and thousands of years ago, when surplus food allowed humans to specialize, all because someone planted seeds and grew more than they needed. So imagine walking through your village. You smell bread baking, you hear children laughing, and near the center of the village, someone is shaping clay with careful hands. Before farming, people owned very little. When you move often, you can't carry heavy objects, right? But now that your village stays in one place, something new becomes possible. You can create lasting tools. So let's start with pottery. You've gathered wet clay from the riverbank. You shape it into bowls, jars, and storage containers. You let it dry in the sun, then fire it in a hot flame until it hardens. Now you can store grain, water, seeds, even dried food. For the first time, food can be protected from rain, pests, and time. Pottery doesn't just store food, it protects survival. And then something interesting happens. People begin decorating their pots. Patterns, symbols, designs. Pottery becomes both useful and beautiful. Now let's move to weaving. Before weaving, clothing was mostly animal hides. Strong, yes, but heavy and not always super comfortable. Now, you twist plant fibers or wool into thread. All you have to do is stretch those threads across a simple loom. You carefully weave over and under, over and under. Hours pass, days pass, and eventually you have cloth. Cloth means lighter clothing, warmer blankets, trade goods, identity through patterns and style. Everybody has their own style. Weaving takes skill and patience. It becomes a very respected craft. Both pottery and weaving show something important. When people stop moving constantly, they can create more complex tools. They invest time in improvement. They think about the future, and these inventions ripple outward. Stronger storage allows larger harvests. Better clothing supports different climates. Trade spreads ideas and designs across regions. These everyday inventions may seem simple, but without pottery and weaving, villages could not grow into towns. Towns could not grow into cities. Civilizations could not rise. Sometimes the biggest changes in history begin with quiet hands, shaping clay, weaving thread, and imagining a better way to live. Picture yourself standing in a field of tall grain. In the early days of farming, harvesting is slow. You pull stalks by hand, and it takes hours. Your back aches, your hands are sore. But then something is invented, a curved blade with a sharp stone edge attached to a wooden handle. This tool is called a sickle. Now, instead of pulling plants one by one, you sweep the blade through the stalks. Harvesting becomes faster and more efficient. That means small change, that tiny little change, means more food collected before bad weather comes. And it doesn't stop there. Someone then invents the grinding stone, a heavy, flat rock used to crush grain into flour. Now, grains can become bread, or porridge, or oatmeal, or whatever you needed. Food becomes easier to eat and store. Later, people begin using early plows. Instead of digging soil by hand, animals helped pull tools that turn the earth. Fields can be planted faster. Larger areas can be farmed. Did you guys know that the auroch, which is the ancestor to the modern cow, is one of the first animals to be domesticated? Every improvement makes life slightly easier, or at least more productive. But there is something important to notice. Better tools don't always mean less work. Sometimes they mean larger fields, bigger harvests, and more responsibility. With better tools, villages can grow larger. Larger villages then need more food. More food means more farming. It's a cycle of growth. And tools improve in other areas too, like sharper stone axes for cutting wood, stronger building tools for houses, improved fishing tools. Each invention builds on the one before it. Humans are natural problem solvers. When a task is difficult, someone always asks, "Is there a better way?" Well, that question drives progress. From stone sickles to metal plows, from grinding stones to machines. The story of better tools begins in these early fields. And every tool we use today, from kitchen knives to tractors, traces its history back to this moment when humans first decided to improve the way they worked the land. Small inventions, but a huge impact. So imagine standing in your village marketplace, right? You have extra grain stored safely. Your neighbor has beautifully made clay pots. Another family weaves soft cloth. But there's something your village doesn't have: strong, shiny stone for better tools. One day, strangers arrive. They carry stones from distant mountains, shells from faraway seas, bright minerals you've never seen before. You realize something important. You don't actually have to make everything yourself. You could trade. Now, trade begins simply. You offer grain for stone, cloth for salt, tools for animal hides. Both sides benefit. Trade expands because after a while, villages specialize. If your village makes the best pottery, others will want it. If another village has rare materials, you need them. Over time, trading routes form. People travel farther. They learn new languages. They share stories and ideas. Trade doesn't just move goods, it moves knowledge. A new farming method spreads. A better tool design travels. A new pattern for weaving appears. Slowly, villages become connected in networks, and something else changes. Trust becomes important. If you agree to trade 10 baskets of grain for stone, both sides must keep their word. Trade encourages cooperation and communication, but it also creates competition. Villages compete for valuable resources. Control of trade routes can bring power. Trade lays the groundwork for something bigger: economies. Long before money existed, humans were building systems of exchange. So if you haven't heard of it, the barter system is the original economy, okay? So I'm going to trade a dozen eggs for a gallon of milk, or vice versa, right? That's essentially what they're in right now. Now, today, when you see food from another country in a grocery store or clothes made across the ocean, you are seeing the modern version of this ancient trade idea. Trade began when early farmers realized they could share their surplus, and from that very simple exchange, the world began to connect. Unit 5: Leadership and Power. So imagine your village has grown. There are many families now. Fields stretch beyond the houses. Grain is stored in shared buildings. Animals must be protected, and disagreements sometimes happen, right? Even in a family, sometimes you argue with your siblings. So when life was spent in small moving groups, most decisions had been made together. But now that people live in larger permanent communities, things are more complicated. Who decides how land is used? Who organizes planting and harvests? Who settles arguments? Slowly, certain people begin to stand out. Maybe it's the wisest elder, someone who remembers many seasons and understands the land. Maybe it's the strongest defender, someone who protects the village. Perhaps it's a skilled organizer who can coordinate work and keep the peace. These early leaders were not always kings. Many were respected because of their experience, fairness, or knowledge. But something important begins to change. Leadership brings influence. If you organize the harvest, people depend on you. If you guard the grain storage, you hold responsibility and power. Over time, leadership roles can become permanent. Some families may pass leadership to their children. Rules begin to form, and authority grows stronger. The first leaders emerged not because people wanted control, but because growing communities needed organization. And from these early decision makers, the idea of government begins, a system to guide, protect, and manage society. From village elders to modern presidents, the story of leadership begins here. So imagine your village after a successful harvest. Tall jars of grain are stacked carefully inside a storage building. This grain will feed families through winter. It will help during drought. It means survival. Now ask yourself, who controls all that grain? In small hunter gatherer groups, food was usually shared very quickly. There was little storage. But farming changes that. Food can now be saved, counted, protected, and controlled. If you are the person who manages the grain storage, others depend on you. You decide how much each family receives, when food is given out, how much is saved for planting next season. Food becomes more than nutrition, it becomes influence. People may respect or fear the person who controls the surplus. Those who protect storage buildings or organize harvests gain importance in the community. Over time, this can lead to inequality. Some families may store more than others. Some leaders may control larger portions of land. Wealth begins to appear in new forms, not just in tools or skills, but food reserves. Food also allows leaders to reward loyalty. Grain can be traded, gifted, or used to gain support. This is one of the first moments in history when resources create social power. Today, access to food still shapes power in communities and nations. Countries that grow or control large food supplies hold influence. The connection between food and power began thousands of years ago when the first farmers realized that storing grain meant storing security. And whoever controlled that security held strength within the village. So imagine walking through your growing village, all these things have been happening, and you're starting to notice, some homes are larger. Some families have more animals all of a sudden. Some people keep giving orders, and others are just doing what they say. That's odd. Well, something new is happening. As farming creates surplus and specialization grows, people begin to take on different roles. And over time, those roles start to matter in new ways. So in early villages, you might see farmers who grow the crops, craft workers who make tools and pottery, traders who travel and exchange goods, leaders who organize work and protect resources, and defenders who guard the community. At first, these roles simply reflect different jobs, but slowly they begin to create differences in status. Some roles come with more influence. Leaders and those who control food storage may have larger homes or more resources. Skilled craft workers may be highly valued. Others may have fewer possessions or less say in decisions. And for the first time, society becomes layered. This is the beginning of social classes. Social classes are groups of people ranked by wealth, power, or role. So before farming, most hunter-gatherer groups were more equal. There was little to store, little to own long term. But once land, food, and tools can be owned, differences grow. Now, social classes don't appear overnight. They develop slowly over generations. But this shift changes how people see themselves. You are no longer just a member of the group. You are a farmer, a potter, a leader, a laborer. These early layers of society become the foundation for the complex class systems seen in later civilizations. Kings, nobles, workers, merchants. The idea that society is organized into levels begins here in the early farming villages, and it continues to shape the world today. Okay, so here's your activity for this unit. Okay, this is a role play activity, so I want you to work with a partner or a group, and you're going to pretend that your village has a problem, and that's food shortage. So figure out who decides what happens. Okay, so who decides that the food is scarce? Who decides how much each family gets? Who decides who's growing that food? Who decides what's happening? Okay, so work together and figure all that out. And again, feel free to pause this video until you're done. Now we're on to Unit 6, which is health in the human body during this revolution. So first we're going to talk about diet changes. So imagine sitting down to eat in your early farming village, right? Before farming, your meals were different almost every day. Wild berries, nuts, fish, roots, and meat filled your plate. The menu changed with the seasons. Your diet was varied and colorful. But now farming has changed what you eat. Grain becomes the center of most meals because it's something that people could grow reliably. So you have wheat, barley, rice, and corn. You grind it into flour, you bake it into bread, you cook it into porridge. Grains are filling, they store well, they feed many people, and that is a big reason why farmers depend on them. However, something important happens. When one or two crops become the main food source, variety decreases. You may eat more calories, but fewer different nutrients. Archaeologists studying ancient skeletons have found that early farmers were often slightly shorter than hunter-gatherers. Their bones sometimes show signs of harder labor, and their teeth show more cavities from grain-heavy diets. Grinding grain on stone tools sometimes left tiny bits of grit in the flour. Over time, that grit wore down teeth. This doesn't mean farming was a mistake. It means there were trade offs, right? Farming provided reliable food and allowed populations to grow, but it also changed human health. And for the first time, humans had depended heavily on few crops instead of many wild foods. And even today, much of the world still depends on just a handful of major crops. The shift that began thousands of years ago from varied wild foods to grain based meals continues to shape what we eat every single day. Now we're going to talk about disease, right? So imagine your village on a warm afternoon. Children are playing between houses, animals wander nearby. Smoke rises from cooking fires. Life feels busy and full. But something new is happening, something invisible. Before farming, small groups moved often. If someone became sick, the group might move away from the area. Germs had less chance to spread because people were not crowded together for long periods. Well, now everything has changed. Villages are permanent. Homes are close together. People sleep, cook, and live side by side. And animals, goats, sheep, cows, chickens are kept nearby. When humans began living closely with animals, germs had new opportunities. Some diseases that once affected only animals slowly adapted to infect humans. Crowded living spaces also meant that if one person got sick, many others might catch the illness quickly. Stored food attracted pests like rats and insects. Waste built up around homes. Clean water could become harder to protect. So, for the first time in human history, epidemics became possible. This doesn't mean farming was a mistake either. Again, it means it came with trade offs. More food means more people. More people means more crowding. More crowding means faster spread of disease. Even today, many major illnesses began long ago when humans first lived close to domesticated animals. Okay? The story of disease spreading begins in these early villages when humans chose to settle down and build permanent communities. And with that choice came growth and civilization and also new health challenges that we are still learning to manage today. Another thing that was changing was hard work. Okay, so imagine standing in a field at sunrise. The air is cool, but you know the day will grow hot. In your hands is a digging stick. The soil is heavy. There are no machines, no tractors, and no engines. Only muscle. Before farming, hunter gatherers moved often and worked in bursts, tracking animals, gathering plants, then resting when food was found. But farming changes the rhythm of life. Now, the work never truly stops. In planting season, you bend over, row after row, pressing seeds into the ground. During growing season, you weed and water. At harvest, you cut grain by hand, bundle it, carry it, and store it. After harvest comes grinding, hours of crushing grain on stone to make flour. The back aches, the shoulders strain. Year after year, these repeated motions leave marks on the body. Archaeologists can see it in ancient skeletons. Worn joints, thickened bones, signs of repetitive labor. Farming feeds more people, but it demands steady effort. And here's the surprising part. Many early farmers worked more hours than hunter-gatherers did. Why? Well, again, because once you plant crops, you are responsible for them. You can't leave them unattended. You have to protect them from animals and weather and theft, because if you're going to go through all the effort to plant them, you're darn well going to have to go through all the effort to reap the rewards, right? Hard work becomes the price of stability. So basically, everything we have now came from sore muscles and sunburned fields. Farming was not the easy path. It was the committed path, but humans chose it anyway. So let's compare two different lives, okay? From one side to the other. So first, you're a hunter-gatherer. You wake up in a small group. You move with the seasons. Your food changes often. Berries today, fish tomorrow, maybe deer next week. You spend part of your day gathering or hunting, but you also rest, tell stories, and travel. You own very little because you must carry everything. Life is uncertain, but flexible. Now imagine you are an early farmer. You wake up in the same house every morning. You have fields nearby. You plant in spring, harvest in fall. Your meals often include bread or grain. You work long hours during planting and harvest seasons. You store food for winter. You own land, tools, and animals. Life is more predictable, but also more demanding. So let's compare. Hunter-gatherers have more varied diets, more movement, smaller groups, less ownership, fewer large disease outbreaks. Farmers, on the other hand, have a much more stable food supply. They have permanent homes, and they know they'll always have a place to rest their head. Larger communities, specialized jobs, more disease spread, harder repetitive labor. Neither life was perfect, right? Hunter-gatherers faced food shortages and weather dangers. Farmers faced hard labor and health trade-offs. So here's the big question. Which life would you choose? Would you prefer freedom and movement, or stability and structure? This comparison helps us understand something important. The Neolithic Revolution wasn't simply better or worse. It was a trade-off, and that's really the key thing that you're going to learn from this video in general is, it was a really amazing thing, but like everything else, it comes with pros and cons. So humans gained cities, technology, and population growth. They also gained inequality, harder labor, and disease challenges. So understanding both sides helps us see history clearly, not as simple progress, but as a series of choices with consequences. And we are still living with those consequences today. On to Unit 7, Cities and Civilization. So imagine standing beside a wide flowing river. The water moves steadily, sparkling in the sunlight. After heavy rains, the river rises and spills over its banks, leaving behind dark, rich soil. You notice something important. Crops grow a lot better near water. Well, early farmers quickly learned that rivers meant life. Rivers provided fresh drinking water, fish for food, rich soil from flooding, easy transportation. But farmers didn't stop there. They began asking, what if we could move the water? So they dug small channels, canals, to guide river water toward their fields. This system is called irrigation. With irrigation, farmers could grow crops even when rain was scarce, plant larger fields, support more people. Now, imagine the change that this brings. Villages near rivers grow larger. More food means more families. More families mean more houses. And soon, small villages turn into very busy towns. Water control becomes incredibly important. Who manages the canals? Who decides when fields are watered? Who maintains the system? Large irrigation systems require organization and cooperation. they require planning. This cooperation helps create stronger governments and structured societies. Some of the earliest civilizations grew along great rivers because water made stable farming possible. Water doesn't just grow crops, it grows communities, it grows power, and it grows civilization. Even today, major cities still depend on water systems, reservoirs, pipes, dams, continuing a story that began thousands of years ago beside a riverbank. Now, here's a good topic, too. Imagine you're standing inside a busy storehouse, okay? Large clay jars are filled with grain. Farmers are bringing in harvest bundles. Traders are arriving from other villages. Leaders are trying to keep track of who brought what and who owes what. There's a big problem, okay? How on earth are they going to remember everything? Well, when villages were small, people could keep track in their heads. But now communities are growing. Trade is really expanding, and surplus food must be counted, stored, and shared. So somebody has an idea. Hey, instead of just remembering, what if we marked it down? You know? So at first, people used simple symbols, small marks marked into clay, right? Pressed into clay. A line might mean 10. A symbol might mean grain. Another might represent sheep. These early marks are not stories or poems. They are records. Some of the first writing in human history was used to track food. How much grain was stored, how much grain was harvested in the first place, how much was traded. So imagine pressing symbols into a clay tablet while it is still wet. Later, the clay dries and becomes and hardens. The record is now permanent. This changes everything. Now information can be saved, be shared, be checked, and outlast a single lifetime. These clay tablets were essentially like the very, very ancient hard drives. Okay? Writing allows governments to grow stronger, trade to expand further, and laws to be recorded, even stories to be preserved. Over time, simple symbols become full writing systems. People begin recording myths, laws, and history. But all of that begins with something very practical: keeping track of grain. Isn't it amazing? We wouldn't have Shakespeare or Lord Byron or any of the amazing poets and writers and anything we have, like Maya Angelou. None of them would be who they were if someone thousands of years ago hadn't decided they wanted to write down what grain they had. We owe everything to that person, those people. Writing began because farming made society more complex, and every book, text message, and note you write today traces its history back to those first careful marks pressed into clay. So, what is a civilization? This is a good question. So, imagine looking down from high above the land, okay? And you see more than just a village. You see large buildings, crowded streets, markets full of traders, leaders meeting to make decisions, people working in many different jobs. This is something new. This is a civilization. A civilization is a large, organized society where people live together in cities and share systems that help the community function. But what makes a civilization different from a simple village? Well, let's break it down. A civilization usually has cities, which are large populations living in one place, government, leaders and systems that make and enforce rules, specialized jobs such as farmers, builders, soldiers, teachers, traders, etc., writing, which is a way to record information and pass it on, and culture, right, which so shared beliefs, art, traditions, customs. All of these things grew from farming. Without surplus food, there would be no large cities. Without cities, there would be no need for organized government. So without organized government and trade, writing wouldn't develop. And without writing, culture wouldn't spread. Civilization is not just buildings and laws. It is cooperation on a large scale. It is thousands, sometimes millions of people depending on each other. Think about your own life, right? You rely on farmers for food, builders for homes, teachers for learning, leaders for laws. You are living inside a civilization. And every civilization in history, from the earliest river valley societies to the modern world, grew from the moment humans planted seeds and stayed in one place. Isn't that amazing? It's just fascinating to me. All of this began because of agriculture. So if you look at it, okay, you're taking everything from seed to a city. So if you hold a tiny seed in your hand, it doesn't look powerful. It's small, light, and quiet. But now imagine planting that seed. It grows into a crop. The crop feeds a family. The family stays in one place. Staying in one place leads to something new. So let's follow the journey, right? Cover what we've covered so far. Seed. A person plants it on purpose. Farm. Crops grow in fields. Animals are raised nearby. Food becomes more predictable. Village. Families build permanent homes. Storage buildings appear. Neighbors live close together. Specialization. Some people become potters, toolmakers, traders. Not everyone farms anymore. Trade. Villages connect. Goods and ideas travel. Cooperation expands. Leadership. Leaders organize work, protect resources, and settle disputes. Writing. People record grain amounts and trade. Symbols turn into written language. City. Population grows. Buildings rise. Governments form. Culture spreads. And eventually, modern world. So now we have skyscrapers, highways, schools, technology, global trade, and all of it traces back to that first seed. It's easy to think cities appeared suddenly, but they grew very slowly over thousands of years. Each step builds on the one before it. No seed means no farm. No farm, no village. No village, no city. And no city means definitely no modern world. The story of civilization is not just kings and wars and Hammurabi's code. It is about ordinary people planting crops, building homes, solving problems, and cooperating. So when you look at a modern city like New York or Chicago or Seattle today, you are seeing the long ripple effect of one very small, very ancient decision to plant a seed. And the story still grows. So let's talk about how the Neolithic Revolution affects us today. Today, say you're picturing a wide open field, okay? Instead of a farmer with a digging stick, you might see a giant tractor rolling across the land. It plants seeds in perfect rows. Satellites in space help guide it. Irrigation systems spray water in steady arcs. Drones may even fly overhead to check crop health. It looks very different from 12,000 years ago. But look closer. What is actually happening? A seed is still going into soil. Modern agriculture is the updated version of the Neolithic Revolution. The basic idea hasn't changed at all, right? Grow food in one place to feed many people. What has changed is the scale and technology available. Today, farmers use tractors and combines, fertilizers, irrigation systems, refrigerated trucks to transport fresh food, and global trade networks. Food no longer just feeds one village, it feeds cities with millions of people. In fact, most people today do not grow their own food. Did you know that most people are at least 3 generations removed from their food sources? They depend on farmers they probably won't ever meet. This is something new in human history. Modern agriculture allows the world's population to reach billions. Without large scale farming, modern cities could not exist. But there are challenges too. Large farms can affect soil health, water supplies, forests, climate, etc. So today, people are asking new questions. How can we feed everyone while protecting the planet? Some farmers use sustainable methods. Some grow food in cities on rooftops. Others use technology to reduce waste. Modern agriculture is an amazing thing. It connects ancient knowledge with modern science. And every time you eat a meal, you are part of a story that began when early humans planted their first seeds. So the Neolithic Revolution is still alive. It's just wearing a tractor instead of a whole stone tool. So, what are some environmental challenges of farming today? Well, let's say you are looking down at Earth from space, right? You see forests, mountains, rivers, and huge patches of farmland stretching across continents. Modern agriculture feeds billions of people, but growing food on such a large scale affects the planet in powerful ways. So let's step into a field, okay? To grow crops, farmers sometimes clear forests. Trees are cut down to make room for farmland. This process is called deforestation. Trees help clean the air and protect wildlife. So when forests shrink, animal habitats shrink as well. Now look at the soil. If the same crop is planted again and again and again, the soil can lose nutrients. Wind and rain can carry the soil away. This is called erosion. Healthy soil takes hundreds of years to build, but it can be lost quickly. Next, think about water. Crops need water. Large farms use irrigation systems that pull water from rivers and underground sources. If too much water is used, rivers can shrink and groundwater can drop. Fertilizers help crops grow, but when rain washes them into rivers, they can pollute water and harm fish. And then there is climate change. Farming produces greenhouse gases from livestock, fertilizers, and machinery. At the same time, changing climates affect crops with droughts, floods, and extreme weather. It's a cycle. We need food to survive, but how we grow that food matters. The good news: humans are problem solvers, remember? Farmers and scientists today are working on sustainable farming methods, like crop rotation to protect soil, water saving irrigation, renewable energy on farms, growing food closer to cities. The story of agriculture has always been about adapting. Now we face a new challenge. How can we feed the world while also protecting it? The future of farming and the future of the planet depends on the choices we make next. Now imagine standing in that same field again, right? But something feels different. Instead of endless rows of one crop, you see variety. Trees are planted along the edges. Solar panels stand nearby. A farmer checks soil health on a tablet. In the city, vegetables grow on rooftops. Humans are learning again. Just like early farmers experimented thousands of years ago, people today are asking, how can we grow food and protect the earth at the same time? Well, let's explore some solutions, right? First is sustainable farming. This is a big one. Farmers rotate crops so soil doesn't wear out. They plant cover crops to protect the ground from erosion. They use natural methods to reduce pests instead of relying only on chemicals. Next, think about water smart irrigation, right? Modern systems drip water directly to plant roots instead of just spraying large amounts of water everywhere. This saves a lot of water and reduces waste. Then there's urban farming. Like in cities, people grow food on rooftops or in vertical gardens, even indoors under special lights. Food can now be grown closer to where people live, even if you're in an apartment. Another solution is crop diversity. So instead of growing just one type of plant, farmers grow many varieties. This protects against disease and extreme weather. Diversity makes farms stronger. Some farms use renewable energy, like wind and solar power. Others focus on improving soil health, so it stores more carbon, helping to fight climate change. So, here's the thing. The Neolithic Revolution was about learning how to grow food. Today's challenge is about learning how to grow food wisely. The tools are more advanced, but the goal is similar. Feed people, protect the land, and think ahead. Just like the first farmers shaped the world with seeds and soil, your generation will shape the next chapter of agriculture. So just remember, the story is not finished, and the future of farming may be in your hands. So here's some big questions, right? Was farming humanity's greatest achievement or a complicated trade off? What do you think? It's just something to discuss and think about with a friend or partner or anyone. All right. So remember, the Neolithic Revolution isn't over. Every meal you eat connects you to people who lived 12,000 years ago. We are still shaping the world they started. Thank you for coming today, guys. I hope you really enjoyed the video. The Neolithic Revolution is something I really enjoy. It's really interesting to me. And if you want to do some research on it, please do. It's a really awesome topic. And hopefully this helps you understand why. And I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks. See you soon.